I'm introducing Mark Walker, who is currently the director of Northwest Met for another month. No, not less than that.
3 days.
For 3 days. 3 days. Yeah, and then it goes to me. So Mark's been great with the organization, and he'll be the immediate director. So I'll get to work with him some more. He is the technology classroom and labs manager at Portland State University, and as you can see, he's going to be doing a presentation about work-life and balance. He's a self-proclaimed workaholic, so he obviously has had to find that balance of making things work at home too. So, Mark, come on up here and wow us with your skills.
That's not going to measure up. So first of all, I have a request. This is going to be my operating assumption is that we're all going to be more engaged. So I'd actually like everyone to move forward because I really don't want to throw the catch box all the way to the back, and I'd like people to compress to more tables toward the front if we could. So let's take a minute and do that, please. Thank you. This presentation will be a participation activity. This is not one you can sit in the back of the room and go, interesting. Yep. It's my sneaky way of making everyone get up and make a little bit of movement after that fantastic lunch that makes everyone lethargic despite the absence of a lot of L-tryptophan. All right. Well, thank you for moving forward. I really appreciate it because I am going to have you. What you don't automatically know is that you just assigned yourself to a table, because at your tables you are going to be doing a little bit of discussion with the people at your table with you. So I hope that everyone sitting at a table that they would enjoy and appreciate talking to someone they're sitting next to. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation as soon as I can get out of my own way. So I want to start off by stating my assumptions, my goals, and my assertions. My assumptions are in the room because you're, like a lot of us, that you're finding it a real struggle to balance the needs you have in your life with the needs you have at work, that work is constantly adding more to your plate and not really doing a good job of removing much, and the university environment, the academic environment, and technology changes are really making a challenge for all of us. This presentation is frankly going to break some of my own rules. Great presentations are not text heavy. My operating assumption is that those of you who are in the room who are interested, you will get my presentation shared with you, and the whole last page is nothing but all the references I pulled. There's a lot of research on work-life balance going all the way back to the 1930s. That's great data, and I'm just assuming you're going to want that data when you leave. So there will be a lot of text, but I'm going to try to push ahead from that. And with that, I'll go ahead and get started. And my goal is just to kind of share my ideas, the obstacles I've come across, and then get some ideas from all of you too, because this is a group activity and we're all kind of in this together. Okay, so first I'm going to start by confessing my own sins in not doing very good work-life balance, to kind of give you my perspective on this. So way back when I was going from 19 to 20, I got a job at a clothing retailer, and I won't tell you who that retailer is, but their name rhymes with TAP. That clothing retailer was supposed to be a part-time job while I went to college. I really loved it. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed myself. But everything about the company was about who could be the most dedicated to that company. Everyone was what we call war storying about how super dedicated they were to their jobs. In my particular case, they moved me from being a part-time employee. They skipped me being an assistant manager. And that was because assistant managers were hourly and store managers in training were salaried. And I was really happy about that. So that's the first warning that my badge at that employer should have said that. I was coming into work first thing in the morning, I was leaving when the store closed in the evening, and I was taking work home with me, which back then, back in the 80s, was hard to do. I was taking all the timesheets home and approving them at home, which made me look something like this. Basically, you could take that picture, make that, instead of a laptop, a series of timesheets that were paper back in those days. I have a very clear recollection of waking up at about 3 in the morning with Mr. Ed on TV, and I was drooling all over everyone's timesheets, and I had to dry them off so I could take them to work the next day. This was very common for me to do back in the day, and this is the 80s. So at the clothing store, I realized after 3.5 years that I really needed to quit because I hit February of 1 year, and I realized my stress from that job was not going down, and December is supposed to be the crazy season. Valentine's Day is not, and I was having chest pains at 20. Chest pains at 20 is a red flag that you're doing something wrong. So I quit without any other job. I went to an employment agency and I said, you know what, I've done retail for a long time. I want a blue-collar job, give me something different. And so they got me a job at a conveyor belt company, which was a company we designed and installed conveyor belts. I worked 8 to 5. I didn't even have keys to the place. I showed up for work every morning. I had a bunch of will calls and orders to do. Every once in a while, I would go out with the people who were called the belt bullies, where the guys actually installed the big conveyor belts at their rock quarries and grain silos along the Willamette, and it was awesome. I used to go home from that job every day at 5 o'clock, exhausted, but feeling like I'd really accomplished something. You know, there's this big pile of work I had to do every day, and at 5 o'clock, it was all done, or the things that weren't done were staged for the next day. And it was like a revelation to me. I'm like, oh my God, this is really awesome. The really cool thing is I actually had gone to the employment agency and said, please give me Fred Flintstone's job. And the day I was delivering a conveyor belt to a rock quarry in Vancouver from Portland, and I arrived at the rock quarry, I'm like, oh my God, I'm literally in a pit that looked very much like that. I'm like, score! I've got Fred Flintstone's job! I was just missing the tie and the tiger coat. It was just perfect. Totally loved it. That's the only job I've ever deliberately gone back to say hello to my former coworkers because they really were like a family. When I ended up leaving that job because there was a job in my college profession, which is psychology, the owner of the company actually came and saw me, and he handed me my last paycheck, and he's like, are you sure you want to leave? And I said, yeah, it's in my field of study. I really got to do it. So I left that job at the conveyor belt company to go to work for a psych hospital. I thought it was perfect. I could work nights from 11 p.m. to 7 in the morning. I could take college classes all day long, and none of them would conflict with my work schedule, and night shift at a psych hospital should be pretty easy. However, it was not too long that I'd been at the psych hospital when I got the name Double Man. Who here knows what a double is at a hospital? Anybody? Ryan, what's a double? It's when you work 2 back-to-back shifts. So I was coming into work at 11 p.m. at night. Someone would call in sick somewhere around 5 a.m. They'd either call in an agency nurse or they'd say, who wants to work it? I'd go, I'll work it. So I'd work from 11 p.m. to 3:30 in the afternoon. I got paid time and a half for that whole extra shift. Sometimes I would go home at 3:30 in the afternoon, come back at 11, I'd go back home, or I'd get a call at noon saying, can you come in at 3? Can you work from 3 p.m. until 7:30 the next morning? I'd do it. So I was known as Double Man. That became my name there. I got 1 million hours. I was able to move to Northwest Portland. I was in my early 20s, and I was a party boy. And I am the reason they have that slide that my generation is really glad Facebook didn't exist back then, because the things I was doing would be getting me in trouble now. But I made myself a workaholic at the hospital. I left that job eventually to go back to school. And I did start working for a computer lab in higher education, and that's how I all came to you here. So, yes, I've told you my whole work biography. The point is I'm telling you this from my perspective as someone who is still working on not being a workaholic. So you understand my perspective on this, because I think for some of us, we've done it to ourselves. That the work-life balance issue is exacerbated by the fact that we've like, please make me work long hours. I like it. I feel better when I work long hours. That's who I am. I don't know if that's all of you are, but that's definitely like my default. So, while all this is going on in my personal life, this is what's happening outside. Society's going from this to this. We've all become connected. We're connected all the time. We're engaging in all these behaviors and activities that really make the blurring of our work lives and our personal lives not be terribly distinct. Because those same devices that they're connecting on there with their Facebook and their news and home theater forums like I do are also connecting to work even though they're not at work. So how do we define work-life balance? And this is where I have a question for all of you. I need all of you to take about 5 minutes at your tables, talk amongst yourselves. What do you think right now work-life balance looks like, and how would you define it? So go ahead and just talk amongst yourselves, and we'll get 5 minutes, and then I will start passing the talk box, the catch box, to each table where you come up with your definition. Okay, are we ready? I'm going to throw the ball to Frodo, or the box.
Okay, so I guess with our group, we were kind of wondering, you want us to define what we think is an ideal work-life balance, or what ours personally is?
I would go ahead and define what you think work-life balance is, or the closest you came to that. I think that's either one's going to be great and helpful.
So we didn't really have an answer. We just have kind of basically that since we all do kind of work in the field where technology is an essential part of our jobs, that it is really hard to keep them separated whenever it's IT or computer and balance related or whatever, because your devices all connect you to your jobs and everything, and so it can be hard to keep those separated, especially whenever your life revolves around those areas. So I guess.
Great. Yeah. No. So it sounds like what you're saying is, to some degree, work-life balance has been troubled because these are a leash. That they're a benefit, but they're also a leash.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know I kind of got a little bit nervous the first time I went from, I guess, what I would call a dumb phone to a smartphone, because it made it so I could actually read email.
Right.
And all that. Yeah. Great.
Well,
Thank
and
you.
also when they contact you, it most of the time it lets them know that you saw the message. You can't say, "Oh, I was busy."
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seen but not responded to. Ooh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and pass it to the next table or throw it.
I think Emily defined work balance as obviously the amount of time you're spending on the job, whether it's at the job or at home, versus tuning out and just kind of doing your own thing. But it's a very difficult thing to do. I think probably I'm not alone in that. I'll be doing something at home and all of a sudden I remember something that I had forgotten during the day, so gee, I better go do that now, or at least write it down, and then it's on my mind, and there goes the night.
I have my best ideas at 2 in the morning, and that's really unfortunate.
That's really unfortunate. Yeah, I've had many times when you wake up at 2 and it's like, oh my God, how am I gonna?
I forgot what I was supposed to, I forgot that thing.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, so Emily, can you pass the mic to Emily for a moment? So you're talking about work-life balance, like the amount of time you spend versus doing one thing versus another?
Yeah, I also was thinking a bit more on just how much time you specifically disconnect from work and say, like, my phone is off, or I just will not do any work for this amount of time. Because it's not just the hours that you're in the office, it's also, the hours that you're sending emails on your phone or coming up with work ideas and thinking about the work.
So you're balancing the hours that you're connected to work and the hours you're unplugged from work.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Go ahead and toss it to the table behind you. Raul.
I think we came up with 2 different ideals for the work-life balance, and one of them is like not taking the work home with you, and that generally involves turning off your connected devices and not being in touch with your work while you're at home, dedicating that time to, say, your family or whatever other obligations you have. I see it as a little bit different. My ideal for a work-life balance is more of a being able to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And that, at this point, with this technology that we have, that might mean being able to get off work at 2 o'clock to go watch your kids at their pageant, and coming back at 4, because you are connected, but being connected is a good thing. You can address an issue even though you're not in the office. And we're past that era where people are outraged because, oh my God, he was. We are getting that feedback, aren't we?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to figure out where the sweet spot is for us not to get feedback.
Well, yeah, but we're past that era of outrage where, oh my God, that guy was using Facebook at work. Everybody uses Facebook at work now. And so that's an example of someone being able to do what he wants to do when he wants to do it while still being able to meet his obligations at work. So on the one hand, you are connected to work 24/7. People send you an email at 7 o'clock and expect you to answer it by 8 o'clock. And then they get upset when you don't. But on the other hand, you've got a free time in the middle of the day if you want it. So it's being able to decide for yourself what is important to you. Plus also, if you really love your job, it's not really work.
Okay, so you're talking a little bit about work flexibility and flexing your schedule a little bit. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, we'll get back to that. I've got more. That's very good feedback for this part. People are going to think I set you up to say that. Bert, can you tell me who you are? Because I don't recognize you.
My name is Ken Hodgen.
Ken, nice to meet you.
Nowadays I work union, so hours aren't really a big deal for me. I'm kind of getting used to those hours, but in my past life, You know, I owned my own business, I was a system administrator, and I did work a lot of hours. But one of the things I really like to not necessarily balance, but make a choice with is my family. I love to coach, I sit several boards, I volunteered. Can't tell you how many times I've dug ditches for soccer fields or lined soccer fields or baseball fields, and I really enjoy doing that, especially with kids and especially my family. And I think even now, where it can be challenging, but I really like my hours now. I think I never thought about a union, but getting kicked out of there after 8 hours is kind of a good thing for me. Now, I think my colleague here had a good observation, is that it's more about choices than balance. You know, at this point in my life, I've chosen to spend more time with my family and coaching than to try and get ahead of my career and get higher in my career. So I think he's exactly right there.
Yeah, those are great points.
So I could abandon my family and work really hard towards my career and maybe get to see them some other time in my life. I've chosen not to do that.
So you're talking about kind of changing your priorities based on that point in your life,
Yep.
and making choices in that way you feel less imbalanced by those activities.
Exactly.
Perfect. Can you toss it back to Media Dave back there?
Don't take your phone to the bathroom.
See, there's a reason why I need Media Dave in every meeting and presentation that I give.
And don't sleep with your phone. Sleep with your partner. Put the phone in another room.
All right. I think that's a toss to Ryan. Oh! We're testing the durability of these microphones. We're going to see exactly how durable and rigorous they are.
All right, so we talked about a lot of things, many of the themes that other people talked about. One of the things that we talked about was flexible work schedules. If we take time from our life to do work, we should take work from our work to do life, if that makes sense. You want to keep that balance in exchange for how much time you're working. We also talked about how difficult it can be to define tasks that you can delegate to other people, especially when you start advancing in your career and moving into more of a management role. You want to really define training programs and get people up to speed to do the things that you have been doing as well as you've been doing them, and that's always a challenge.
Awesome. So you've been talking about tips and tricks to get work-life balance in there.
Right.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Peter?
Did I
So
did
we
I
lost the
forget?
top, but,
Did I forget anyone? Did you, Peter? Did you want to?
you sure? All right. It's an opportunity.
One about, when you take vacation, take an honest vacation. Don't be working during your vacation. Take an honest one.
Right. Awesome. So some of those are definitely, those are tips and tricks to trying to get some work-life balance. That's very true. Okay, so in doing all my research, and I've been doing research for this now for for about a year, but really focused for the last several months, is there several key concepts that kind of came out of what it takes to define work balance, because I think one of the things we kind of heard here is that people are going to define it different ways based on their situation and what their needs are. But the two key concepts that kind of came out of all the reading and research I've done is that really it's about achievement and enjoyment. And what I mean by that is that a little bit like I was talking about with a conveyor belt company, when I went home from work without even really thinking about it, I had a sense of accomplishment and achievement every day because there's something tangibly had changed in that warehouse since I got to work it that morning, and I felt proud of the work I had done. I had accomplished something that made me proud. And then by going home at 5 o'clock, I was able to enjoy my off time because the conveyor belt company never called me at 2 in the morning to say, D2L's down, So I was able to enjoy my off time and not have to worry about being connected to work. But those are the two key components that each of us is going to define what work-life balance is for us individually. But this sentence that really kind of sums it up for me is that I want to achieve something meaningful today, and I want to enjoy something meaningful today. And if I do both those things today, I'm going to have a pretty good day. And if I do both those things every day for the rest of my life, I'm going to have a pretty good life. That's kind of the sum of it. for me. And then I found some really good quotes from the book Work Life for Dummies that I just felt like I really needed to share that added other components. And I'll be sharing this presentation with all of you, is that balance means successfully managing all the responsibilities in both areas of your life. And the thing that I like about this, that some of you alluded to, is it's not that getting work-life balance, that suddenly you're going to be disenfranchising your coworkers or your work is going to suffer. It's that both areas of your life you must be a success. And I think for a lot of us, our default is to sacrifice our personal lives for our professional lives. And I think the trick is you have to be successful in both. So one doesn't suffer because the other's doing well. I really liked that. I also liked that it's about figuring out the right balance for you and creating the best working arrangements possible so that everyone benefits. And the reason I like that is I know, I'm going to keep telling tales on myself. This is going to be a meeting where basically I already said this, is I'm going to be holding up a mirror to my past and it's not going to be flattering, is that I know on those days when I was working those 16-hour days at that job, that I was not the best manager that I could have been, that I was too stressed, I was too tired, I didn't make good decisions. There were times when my engagement with my employees wasn't as positive and interactive as it could have been because I had no bandwidth and I was in chronic burnout. So it should make sense to everyone that if you are able to balance your work and life so that you can come to work every day ready to engage, thank you, Emily. If you can come to work engaged and present at work every day, that's good for you. It's also good for your organization, and it's good for your clients because you're not going to be too distracted and too tired. And on the end, I'm calling it being singed, if we're chronically singed from being on the verge of burnout. I thought it'd be key to talk about what work-life balance isn't also. It's not about equal balance. It doesn't mean that I put in 40 hours of work and therefore I better go play and have fun in my life for 40 hours. It really is, as all of you have been describing, is that it's going to be different for each one of you. It's going to be different for different phases of your life. And things that may look like work, oh, that's air conditioning, sorry. Things that may look like work to other people may be the fun in your life. I think digging a ditch for your kids, team is something that you're doing that's enriching your life and adding meaning to your day, and also giving you a sense of accomplishment as being a good parent and being supportive to their activities. That's making your life meaningful. So again, to someone else, that's going to be work. To a construction guy, that's work. So if you Google work-life balance at all, you're going to see a whole bunch of these. This is called a work-life balance wheel. This is just one to have as an example. I don't expect you all to be able to read this from there, but this is all the spokes on this work-life balance wheel. This one particularly has spiritual fulfillment, love, physical well-being and health, relationships, fun and enjoyment, helping others, work, money, learning. Different wheels are going to have different things on there, and you should calibrate this to whatever works for you. There's maybe things on here that you wouldn't include that add meaning and value to your life. There may be things not on this wheel that you would add, depending on who you are. The trick with these wheels is they're basically a 1 at the very center and a 10 on the outside. And if you just kind of check your work-life balance, and again, just Google these, you can start marking off which areas of your life you feel really fulfilled in and which ones are really being neglected. And really you want your wheel to be a perfect circle of the things that you value, and that way it helps you assess where you need to spend more time concentrating and making your life more balanced. So we're talking a lot about this. As my notes mentioned, this is all the buzz right now. I mean, we've been hearing about work-life balance now for a few years. How big of a problem is this? So a couple of years ago, 12,000 worldwide it's mostly white-collar workers, 94% of the respondents were white-collar workers. Only 37% said that they have good work-life balance. So the majority of the people worldwide, mostly white-collar people, were saying they were not able to do work-life balance. So it is a huge, big challenge out there for a lot of people. And as we've been talking, particularly to us, how do you know when you've got good work-life balance, especially if what you're doing for work, what you're doing for home, and what you're doing for play all look the same? How many people in here play games? I mean, we play games online. I had a coworker on the drive up yesterday, had her laptop open, was playing games. That same laptop's probably used for doing work. I may be on my phone on the bus checking in at the home theater forum, but I also may be reading email from work and replying to that and looking at my calendar for next day's schedule. So the trick is, how do you know when you've got good work-life balance? So, and particularly as it relates to IT, what do you think are the specific challenges to work-life balance relating to instructional support in classrooms? We already kind of talked about this a little bit, but I'd really like you to think about just there's general work-life balance, and then there's work-life balance challenges for IT. And if you kind of raise those kind of, I guess you'd call them higher education technology support issues that you're facing on your universities, and we'll spend about 5 minutes on that. Okay, we'll go ahead and start with Anna's table there with the catch box.
Hello.
Lou.
So I don't know if I can summarize everything that we talked about, but yeah, the whole higher ed thing. So I can't obviously speak for every educational institution in the room, let alone the world, but one of the privileges I think that many of us have in higher ed is that there's some flexibility in when you get stuff done. I know there's a difference between salary and hourly and all that stuff, but compared to you punch in at 8, you clock out at 5, that's it, or oh hey, we'll give you some extra unpaid stuff that you need to do. It's a little bit more flexible than that, so can be. I know I'm generalizing here. But in that environment, it makes it easier to say, I think an example I was just using is, I don't feel a problem in answering advisee emails or texts at 10 p.m. at night occasionally, if I know that I'm going to have what example did I use? A half an hour haircut appointment at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday.
Sure.
You know, but the trick with that, the ultimate trick with that is, does your organization support that? And B, how do you honestly account for that? Because if you're not careful in honestly accounting for that, the danger is that you'll either take too much or give too much, or something will get out of the aforementioned balance.
Awesome. Thank you. That's an excellent answer. Go ahead and toss to whoever you see fit to.
Well, what do you think makes work-life balance particularly challenging? So we had a few different ideas that came up. Some of it is decentralized budgets, so we have different departments, and then we have general campus, and so the administration and decisions that get made can be at odds with each other. But then the support organizations often have to cover or make things work anyway, because they are on demand, you know, day to day, 24 hours. So what else? Oh, one was different types of staff people, adjunct faculty who may be able to adapt to or learn the different ways of doing things on this campus, but then they're done with their appointment and they leave. What else?
People calling you when you're in charge.
Being on call 24 hours a day.
Yep. I don't know anything about that one. Very, very good. Thank you. Go ahead and toss to. Yeah.
We kind of had two parts to it. One of the challenges is making sure there's coverage somehow for the emergency tech things, IT things that come up.
Right.
But the other thing is the expectations that we help set for our customers and our clients. If I have a couple of faculty that I help with projects for their classes, I might know that it'll take me within 24 hours to get it done. I will tell them a week or by the end of the week or something like that, just because if something comes up or if there's a problem, it doesn't create a huge backlash. As you said, sorry, Ryan said, you know, don't answer your emails on like the weekend or Thanksgiving or Christmas, even though you might be able to, because don't set that precedent up for everybody else in the department.
Right. Excellent. Frodo.
So I think one thing that we touched on that hasn't been discussed yet is, as he was saying, the hit by the bus scenario of sometimes there's only one person that knows how to do a particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for instance, we just got a new live stream system that pretty much I'm the only one that knows how to operate so far, even though I'm trying to train a few other people. But like there are certain things that only Media Dave knows how to do, and then I have no idea how to file the paperwork or do whatever. And so, or tech-related things, or if there's an event that comes up that someone forgot to tell us about, there really isn't any other photographers or videographers on campus that can do it, or they'll say, "Oh, we'll handle it," and then what we end up with is something that's not usable, or somebody forgot to plug it in, or whatever. So, I mean, I think that's
Excellent.
one thing.
Yeah.
So there's no one else.
How many
that can do
subject
it.
matter experts are we going to have on every piece of technology that the campus is supporting? How deep is our support? Awesome. Awesome answer. Thank you. All right, go ahead and pass it over to, yes. There we go.
Yeah.
I think everybody touched a little bit on everything that we talked about on this table, with a couple of additions to what you already talked about. The whole thing about answering emails after hours, and it sets a precedent. Where I work, it also is a liability, or they could claim that they worked for 15 minutes off the clock and claim to get paid for it.
Yep.
So part of that, the resources, not having staff for those events that come up, and then, you know, there's always that little bit of stress in the back of the mind, what's going to happen this Saturday, stuff like that. But for the most part, echo everything else, unless, did you guys have anything else you wanted to add to?
Great, thank you. Okay, Peter, or Peter's table?
Let's see, I'm actually looking over our long list of stuff to see if we've missed anything. I mean, we hit it we hit the question in several different ways. One, that the workflow for higher ed is often time shifted. The times that the problems come up are, you know, rather than fitting within a 9-to-5 schedule, because faculty work in summers and weekends doing their own thing, because students work in the middle of the night, problems crop up, you know, outside of the schedule, and that creates problems. The radically varying levels of problems and the ability to channel that workflow to the right people and the right times, you end up dealing with problems that are not necessarily for you, or they're for you, but they're so trivial that it's hard to know when you're wasting time that you should be spending doing something else. Yep. And then, you know, the other piece of that, you know, the fact that it is higher education, that you know, there are fiscal challenges, that you don't have redundant staff, you have limited resources, and also that there's this philosophical dimension, you know, that we all come into it saying, well, this is really all about the students, you know, so we really should put in the little extra mile here or the extra mile there, because it's for education, and that's a social good. Right. You know, even if it's not necessarily for your own social good.
Yeah, Doug wants to say something.
I just want to hit one more piece of that, is that, and I know this is very true for us at Portland State and true for everybody in this room. We are a quarter school or we are semester school. Our first 2 weeks of our academic terms are usually, our work-life balance is not very good those first 2 to 3 weeks, and then it levels off. That's an ongoing trend that I think all of us face.
Yep, thank you. Awesome. Yeah, those are all, see, this is why working in a group on these things, you come up with additional challenges and solutions. There's just one person working on their own, even when they're pulling up the data. Here's what I came up with for the reasons I wanted to bring up this topic, is because I recognize that our clients know we're technologists, and therefore they assume we're always plugged in and available to them. Instructional technology in higher education continues to grow, but our budgets and human resources do not. When we first got our jobs, you know, back when I first got hired, we were rewarded for answering emails and resolving problems at all hours of the day and night. I remember, he's so dedicated. I remember my very first director said, he was on vacation and he answered your email, University Studies. You should be really proud of him and happy. And I'm thinking, I just got rewarded for working on my vacation. You shouldn't be punished, but there should be limits about that kind of stuff. And then again, with online learning, schools are never closed, kind of something you're alluding to. Yeah, we're supporting, you just made this pop up, is we're supporting two different groups of people. We're supporting the students in their education, and we're supporting the faculty in their teaching of them, and they have very different habits and lifestyles. Yeah, exactly. And then other issues that I kind of thought about is for some of us, we've been overworking ourselves for years. As we've alluded to, my boss and my clients now have an expectation that I'm available 24/7 because I did send that email Sunday morning at 7 a.m. That faculty member now expects to be served all hours of the day, day and night, and how did you not respond to my email that I sent you on January 1? And then internally, I think a lot of us who have gotten ourselves out of balance, I think our first gut reaction to trying to get back in balance is that we're afraid our productivity is going to suffer, so we just keep being out of balance. And frankly, I know a lot of us, raise your hand if you like being the go-to person. Doesn't that feel good? Can we just admit it feels good to be the go-to person? I love that. I used to run to rooms, this isn't about work-life balance, I would run to a room to fix something. Some faculty would have their students applaud because they were able to keep teaching their class. That kind of reward for immediately responding to things, that kind of trickles over into being great customer service at all hours of the day and night. And then again, I think another challenge with education is, again, that Empire of Rubber job, I had tangible evidence every day that I'd worked hard and I'd done my job, and my productivity was right there because that staging area was cleaned off. In education, I know that when I talk to my staff and we do our one-on-ones, they're like, some days, Mark, I don't know what I accomplished today. And I can look at it and say, well, you met with 4 employees, you dealt with 1 personnel issue, you solved 3 scheduling dramas, and you put out 4 technology fires on campus. And that's what you did today. But it's not tangible. There's not some big, yay, you worked today, you prevented problems. It's not the same as it is with other areas of life where there's these tangibles when you've completed something. So we're talking a lot about this, but what does the data suggest about working? I mean, if work-life balance is a problem, what do the numbers say? The preponderance of evidence, there's this guy who did a programming convention in 2005, and I pulled this out of all the data I found. He looked at all the research and data that goes back to the 1930s until his presentation in 2005, and this is hundreds of articles and research that's been done on work-life balance, and the compelling argument that came back every single time was that when people try to work more than 8 hours a day, their productivity per hour goes down. It's just not good for us. And that when you stack that up, so if you work 11 hours today and 11 hours tomorrow and 11 hours the next day, it's going to take you 12 hours to do what you would have done in 5 hours the first day you did that. And so productivity really is seriously compromised, that people really, we know this. As education people, we know that students can do active learning for about 2 hours. It should make sense to us that our brains are set up to be able to function and be engaged and be active and be participatory in our work for about 8 hours, and beyond that, our productivity starts to decline. So yeah, we decrease in both our productivity and our engagement, but we often feel like we have to keep up constantly moving forward, rapidly responding to emails and support tickets, because response time is one of the metrics we use to measure our support and value to the university. How many of you are like, they track how long a support ticket's been open? I know at our university, it's one of the metrics they were using to, the average ticket was open 3 days. That's much too long. Now, that deals with the help desk more, but I've heard those metrics, and I know that I had to wait 3 days for a response to that email. Yeah, but you emailed me on Friday night at 7 o'clock. So these are these impulses and urges that we have. So what ends up happening if you work those 11-hour days is you go from being engaged to being disengaged, and that's where, yes, I've created a term because I couldn't find one called disengagementism, and again, with a shout out to Emily for helping me with this. There's another term called presenteeism, when people show up for work when they're sick, which you should not do. But we always use that term now called being present, when people are at work and they are there mentally and using their cognitive function effectively, and you can do that for 8 hours. So disengagementism is when you're at work, but you're just not, you're disengaged, you're checked out. So like the cartoon here, they're trying to figure out work-life balance. Hey, the secret to having a rewarding work-life balance is to have no life. And then it's easy to keep things balanced by doing no work. It's so simple yet genius. Yeah, it was hiding in plain sight. So you're exhausted all the time, you're not being productive, and ultimately you're not addressing those fears that you had working all those long hours anyway. So what do we do about it? So in like anything that's going to be a big overhaul, you want to start with small changes and little changes. So the examples from my own work that I've been working on is I've realized that in my case, I have some unique challenges. I actually find I get work done first thing in the morning, and I also really like working after 4 o'clock, like 4 to 6 o'clock in the afternoon, because there's less interruptions. I'm able to work with fewer distractions, but I can't work from 7 a.m. to 6:20 p.m. because then I'm back at disengagementism. So what I came up with for myself that I'm really liking is I alternate. One day I work 7 to 3, the next day I work 7 to 6, the next day I work 7 to 3, the next day I work 7 to 6. I also live on the I-5 corridor, and I also find that cuts my commute time down in half when I'm on the bus, and I'm much more energized and able to come back to work the next day and be much more focused and much more engaged. I have also asked all my direct reports not to send emails after hours, that I'm not going to be reading my email after hours, which I used to do chronically, and that if something is important after hours, then they have to call me. I know that sounds counterintuitive. In my case, it actually meant that I was able to disengage from work, because if it was big enough for them to call me, then they can interrupt my life, I can answer the question on the phone, and then I can get back to my life, which is much different than sitting there and monitoring my phone to see if someone showed up for that 8 o'clock scheduled shift they had over in the library. And what am I going to do? I've got no Labaton over in the library. Who am I going to call and move over there? They have to call me now, and they're obviously reticent to do that. And then again, yeah, they must call me for anything that's urgent that can't wait till the next day. And just those little tiny steps are already doing a lot of good in my case. Those are my solutions. Your solutions are going to be different. I knew that there were days that I just felt like I needed to stay till 6 o'clock, but I also really like getting to work at 7 a.m. and being there for about an hour and a half before anyone else shows up. So I'm just going to have you yell out this time. So what small changes would you start with? Go ahead and raise your hands for yourselves, for your situations. Ryan. Disconnect email from cell phone. Excellent. I have my student worker. I'll let Doug talk. I have all my student workers that are supervisors. They have service accounts that they only check when they're at work, so it doesn't get blended with their school work, so they don't even get to see work email until they come to work and log in. Doug?
I've created the task of taking my dog to the dog park early in the morning after, like, at about 6:30, depending on the time. That works out so much better for me, and anybody who works with me knows when I've been to the dog park, because that means a better quality day for me, and I've managed my time a little differently. Hence, I don't get that super early start that I used to do. I'm doing something proactive and some exercise before I get to work.
So you're getting a little bit of life in.
So there's nothing wrong with being tethered to one of these and having your work email and your calendar on there.
Sure.
Just don't have them as a push notification. Have it so you have to reach out to check your email, and then that way you're in control.
Anyone else have a strong tip for what they were doing at the show of hands? No? Yes. Right. Yep.
Rise and fall, and so trying to figure that out has been helpful.
Excellent. Yeah, I think if we all know when we feel the most energized and productive. For some of us, it's not first thing in the morning. For some of us, it's 8 o'clock at night. Yeah, so some of the ones that are pretty obvious is managing your connections while you're to work, control your emails rather than letting them control you. Being connected in off hours during specific peak demand times is a sign of a high performer. So if you want to say, yeah, for the first 2 weeks of the term, I'll respond and deal with emails after hours because it means I'll have less fire putting out to do the next day, but I'm only going to do that for 2 weeks and then that's over. Do not send emails outside of work hours except upon agreed upon circumstances. Again, I've been doing this for years. I still get people there was someone 2 weeks ago who was upset. They sent an email Friday night at 7 o'clock, and they were mad that they didn't get an email till mid-morning on Monday. Wow. I'm sorry. They need to adjust. Another important thing while you're focusing on work-life balance is to remember why you love your job. If you're feeling stressed out and burned out, and you're thinking about, oh, I'm sacrificing my life for work, it's important to remember the things that got you to work in the first place and why you love your job, so you can focus on those things too and remember that you can get meaningful joy and achievement out of your work that maybe is missing right now. And if you focus on the things you love, it's going to help readjust your attitude so you can come back from being on the verge of burnout from your jobs. So you've done all this, that's great, but who in the room is their own boss? I'm not my own boss. My boss is sitting there, but not my boss's boss. So what's in it for your supervisor? I mean, if I go into my, hey, I've decided I'm going to start showing up for work instead of 60 hours a week, 40 hours a week, and I know I'm unclassified and represented, but that's what I'm doing, and I'm going home at 3 o'clock every day, and I'm not responding to emails. Bye. Do you think your boss is going to like that? No, thank you, Dave. Thank you. So for my perspective, as someone who kind of spends a lot of time thinking about conflict resolution, it's like, what's in it for them? And really, the thing that I come back to is, and I said this earlier, our employees and our clients want our best work. Modifying the manner in which we work to improve our work performance should be a very shared value we can all invest in. If I'm not giving you my best right now because I'm constantly fried, that's not good for you, it's not good for my organization, it's not good for our customers. If I can change my work, my productivity may temporarily take a dip, but then it'll reset. And then everyone would rather probably have me be engaged than checked out when we go to that meeting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That makes sense to everybody? So it's that shared value. And again, if you have a boss who is like, well, this just sounds alarming to me, I know you've kind of been living here for years, show them the data. Again, there's all kinds of work-life balance information. Again, you'll all be showed in the presentation. Going back to the 1930s, the data is conclusive. People who work more than 8 hours a day are not being more productive than people that don't. So work with your leadership on shared expectations for you. So my examples would be, I will not actively monitor email on weekends or after work hours. If someone calls me due to a technical issue that needs to be escalated to me, I will connect to work and perform the needed triage to resolve the situation. And that faculty that contact me after hours will get a reply during the first hour of work during the next business day. If you sit down and talk to your boss about those things and say the reasons behind that, they're probably going to get behind you, but at least have a shared expectation. You don't just change your behavior and then don't tell them. It's like, where'd Mark go? It's only 3 o'clock. He's usually here another 3 hours. That's, what's going on? Did he get another job? So, and again, then ask yourself, what did you do to contribute to the situation? I know for a lot of us, being busy felt good. It made it feel like we were important and valued, and they can't replace me because no one else would put up with this. That's what we would tell ourselves. You're working too hard was always a compliment. It's really not. It's the same like people telling you you're too nice. War storying about how hard you're working is not a good thing. Everyone know what I'm talking about with war storying? Okay. And it felt safe falsely in terms of job security. I always thought, well, if I live here, again, they can never replace me. I think most people now recognize it's not a good thing not to have poor work-life balance, and they lose respect for us. What about those who you work with? Talk about placing value on single tasking as opposed to multitasking. People cannot multitask. It's a myth. For the last 20 years, there's all kinds of data that multitasking is a myth. People cannot do high brain function on 2 different things at the same time and do a better job of it than if they tackled each thing independently and just got them done side by side. You get it done quicker. There's lots of data to show that. So tell your people, turn off their phones, close their laptops, and they're in the meeting with you so they are present and engaged, and they're going to get more work done. Discourage the always-on environment. If your employees send an email after hours, talk to them about it. I had an employee of mine that I got an alert that he was in the technical chat room on our campus after hours. I talked to him about it the next day and I said, no. And he said, no, I left it open on my computer, I actually wasn't on duty. I'm like, that's good, because it's not okay with me that if you're in the technology trouble chat room for work after hours, that's not acceptable to me. Do not reward people for putting in time off the clock. I've also asked my people to do a time evaluation, not an audit. I think the word audit scares people. I've asked my people to come up with a realistic expectation of what an ideal 40-hour work week looks like for them. I realize you can't see this very well here, but basically I'm just saying, how much time does it take you to read and respond to emails in a meaningful and thoughtful way every week? How long does it take you to, how many hours do you have for projects every week? If I give you a project to do that's going to take 40 hours, that doesn't mean you're going to have it ready for me in a week. If you can only dedicate 4 hours a week to it, it means that may be due in 10 weeks. And if you can't do that, then what else on your schedule has to replace it and not get done so you can get that done? But I had my employees do this themselves. We look at them, we're evaluating them and saying, does it really take you that long to do that? Are you allowing yourself enough time? So they're engaged in this process too, because again, I had employees in our one-on-one saying, I just don't know what I got accomplished today or this week. And by pointing this out, it helps them deal with the fact that they don't work for a conveyor belt company where they have these big tangibles that prove they were beneficial to their organization. So some of you have mentioned working all kinds of different hours, taking breaks, getting a haircut during the day. That's what they call these days work-life integration, where maybe you show up for work at 10 a.m., you work for 2 hours, you go to the dog park with your dog, and then you come back at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And work-life integration is the latest buzz. Millennials really love it. They don't like work-life balance. I actually think that work-life integration is just the next generation of work-life balance. They're still balancing their work with their life. They're still getting their 40 hours a week in. They're just not putting their 40 hours in 8-hour chunks. But I wanted to bring that up because it is a buzz, and I did hear several of you talking about it as the next generation of flex, so thank you for mentioning that. Finally, did anyone know who David Brooks is, a New York Times writer? So he did a really good TED Talk about the difference between the things you do every day that build your resume and the things you do every day to build your eulogy, which sounds a little bit morbid, but he was actually talking about what are the things you do every day that are about advancement and achievement in the work world, and what are the things you do in your personal life that give your life meaning, that's going to mean something when you're gone, that people are going to value your life based on those things. The thing that I got from his TED Talk about the difference between building your resume and building your eulogy is really that ultimately it seems like the key to having a great resume and a wonderful eulogy is to be present in our own lives, and we get there by practicing work-life balance, because for a lot of us, we do, especially in higher ed, I would hope there are deeper values to what we're doing by providing support to our university. I know that I love supporting our faculty, I love supporting our students, I find it exciting to come to work and work with students from all over the world. I learn from them more often than they learn from me. And it's rewarding to watch people getting ready to go out and start the rest of their lives. And that has a deeper meaning for me. It doesn't mean I'm going to spend 60 hours a week at work, but it means that work-life balance for me means that I'm not just going to wait for my 40 hours to be over and clock out and go home and only do meaningful things in those life hours that are not work hours. So those are my takeaways from you. So thank you for your time today. I know I'm out of time, but thank you very much. And here's all those resources I was talking about. Again, this presentation will be shared with all of you. There's a plethora of data that supports 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, in whatever kind of configuration. Thank you again.